I do definitely think that, like I said, ChatGPT or any AI will remove certain jobs. I do think it's going to open up massive, huge ones. We've already started to see.
Let's talk about your blog here for a minute or two. What was that came before you being a Atlassian community leader, right? So what was your motivation behind starting a blog?
I don't know. I just enjoyed it, and then I started thinking. I was like, I wonder whether or not like I could enjoy it for tech, like an actual piece of functionality, or some help, because obviously I was starting to consume more and more for the community as well. And at the time I was like, I'm gonna give it a go.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Summer of Atlassian. Today I have Dan Toombs from across the pond, and I'm very excited to be talking to Dan because we don't really know each other that well, but I every conversation I have with you is always fun and enjoyable. So I wanted to bring you onto the main channel here so we can have a little chat, get to know Dan a little bit better. Dan, thanks for coming on.
No, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, no, definitely. So Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are? We'll start off with the basics and then we'll go deeper into
Sounds
some
Yeah,
personal
sounds
stories.
great. So yeah, I've been involved with Atlassian for around just over 9 years, which is actually insane when you think about it. Um, I was actually going to go into or trialing for the Royal Air Force, but I failed my medical, which is the only thing that you can't really control, which was quite upsetting because
How
obviously
do you how did you feel medical?
I have allergies. So I
There's
had at the
medicine for
time,
that, no?
sorry.
Isn't there like medicine for that?
Yeah, well, I mean, so at the time I was, um, so I back in 2016, I suffered like a major allergic reaction to actual pollen. So it was hay fever that started it, and then because of that, when I then had I had an Indian takeaway that night, and it brought on a nut allergy straight after because my body was still reacting to the pollen. So within 2 days, I immediately ended up with two major allergies.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, when I then tried to get into the Air Force, they were like, absolutely not.
Really?
Um,
Allergies is a
yeah,
disqualifier.
yeah. Well, as soon as you get any kind of allergies, as soon as you become dependent, that's when you're not allowed to do it. So like carrying EpiPens and things like that, that's
Mm,
a disqualifier. So yeah, that was a big killer for me.
yeah, I can
But
imagine that the EpiPen being a liability there with the Air Force or with military.
yeah, so it was a big shame, but I kind of started looking, found a job at what was Clear Vision at the time. And yeah, it kind of went from there. I got trained. So I didn't go to uni. I didn't do any of that kind of thing. But got trained to eventually become a consultant. Spent 4 years with them, and then went to end customers. So that's where I've been for almost the last 5 years. Um, just kind of it's been good because it's allowed me to see challenges from like being a consultant and in the actual end customer, and like how it changes from side to side, and trying to then navigate a customer through like obviously knowing maybe how like the pricing model works and this and that works. It's been good and hard at the same time. So it's been, yeah.
So I take it based on that story, your path to Atlassian wasn't really one that you picked, but rather was picked for you.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the Jira Life doesn't choose, it chooses you. You don't choose it,
That's
right?
what we say. I've heard a few
Yeah.
white people say that word once or twice.
Yeah. So no, it definitely chose me. I don't regret it one bit. I've made some incredible friends from the ecosystem. Uh, I've got incredible mentors that still mentor me to this day. It's led me to becoming agile lead, like an agile lead. It's led me to being like consultant and solution architecture, and yeah, I love it.
Awesome. So right now, then you're telling me then where you work today, you're not you are you like an Atlassian consultant for them, or do you do something outside of Atlassian, or do you
No,
use the
I,
Atlassian tools to do your job?
yeah. So I'm a dedicated Atlassian resource. So
Okay.
I am one of two Atlassian architects that look after the entire ecosystem, so dedicated resources. There are obviously a few more admins for the company, but they do it as a side job. It's our job to scale and make sure everything
Mm.
is healthy.
But speaking of which, how old are you, Dan? You look really young.
I am 27, almost
Wow,
28.
you are so young, so young.
Yeah, no,
How
I
long have
like
you
it.
been in this Atlassian ecosystem then?
So yeah, just about 9.5 years.
9.5. You made it look like it was 2.5
Yeah,
earlier when you were explaining this.
no, it was 9.5 years. So it's I did 4.5, almost
You're
5 years.
telling me you were like a teenager still when you jumped into this.
Yeah, I was. Yeah,
Did you just
long
have this
time.
realization too?
Yeah, that's it's because I didn't go to uni and I basically failed the medical. I was like, well, I got to do something because I still have to earn money. So what do I do? And yeah, I found Atlassian. I pretty much left out of college. So our college, you're in a high school, and went and found something. So yeah, I was probably about 19-ish when I got it, and
Yeah,
obviously
no,
being
definitely.
almost 28, there's a lot of time in there. So
It's interesting because I always ask, like, there's always like, I wouldn't say competition, but there's always this, man, I don't even know the word to describe it, but there's like a group of folks, and a question that I ask people like Sean Doyle, right, from release teams, like, how many years have you been within the Atlassian ecosystem? And it's like 20 years or stuff like that, right? And so we know who like man, I don't even know how to say these things without upsetting people, right? But there's a group of people that have been in the Atlassian ecosystem for a really long time, but I don't think we give enough light to the youngest members of the Atlassian ecosystem and like who's coming up in the teenagers. Because like my kid, 12 years old, and my 7-year-old, right? Like they're using it today for like their schoolwork. So
really, as in like the school is got a license for them and they're using it, or they're using it to help
so we
them.
homeschool our kids, right? So we have our
Okay.
kids homeschool. So when my wife to manage their homeworks and their assignments and like all the things that they got to do, plus all the house stuff that they have to do, they're in Jira. So my wife uses the work management calendar feature to kind of like set up their calendar so that they can see everything and know what they're supposed to work on and when their due dates are for everything. So they're
Wow.
forced to use it because of who their parents are.
But then again, you think about it, Atlassian's definitely not going anywhere for anytime soon that I can currently see. So, but you're teaching them about SaaS applications, which will 100% use if they go into tech.
Right.
You know, so I can see it as an important step, especially if they want to go into more like consultancy world.
Yeah, no, it's one of the things where my 12-year-old right now, he's kind of more interested. He's like, Dad, how do I make a workflow? And I'm like, first of all, how do you like why would you know what a workflow
Yeah, what do you want to know?
But he helps edit the videos, right? So he watches, like he's listening. He might not know what I'm talking about or what's going on in the videos, but he's definitely
That's cool.
yeah. So he's in there. So yeah, we're trying to turn this whole thing into like a big old family affair where Jira does play a giant role. It plays such a giant role that now when we go eat food, last night we kind of played with it for the first time, where my name's Alex, right? So it's such a common name, and whenever we go order food, like at a pickup bar or something, um, my name gets confused. Like there's other Alexes, right? And so like
Yeah,
our order time gotten mixed up. So I told my wife, I'm like, I'm just gonna start putting Jira from now on as my name. So, but like my kid, like they embrace it, they love it. Like they just like our life is Jira.
that's cool. I like that.
So yeah, but no, definitely there should be like I wouldn't say an award, but there should be like at least some recognition for the younger bees. We've been talking Jira Junior or something like that was something that we talked about in the
Jira
previous
juniors. Oh, that's cool.
would be something.
There's a lot of junior stuff going out. So that fits.
What are your thoughts and views on like K through 12 like STEM outreach? Since you didn't go to the university, do you feel like you needed it? Like, do you feel like you're missing out anything? Do you feel like
I think the trouble with, STEM is incredibly important. So my high school was a tech high school. So whereas like, I don't know if you have it here, but they can effectively get like additional grants where you can be like an arts school, you can be a technology school, and that's your focus. So when you come out and do your exams, you have to have at least one tech or art or something else. And that was my school was a tech one. So I actually chose like higher electronics, which was like systems and controls, and it was like understanding not only how to create your own motherboards and everything else, but like why you would program them in certain ways, what's the logic behind things. And I loved it. And I think had I gone to uni, had I had enough academic, I don't want to say academic ability because I still finished with good grades, but
right?
I'm not inclined to study. Like I don't like taking exams. I can take them. I can pass them. I just don't like them. I don't like school. So had I been more academically inclined, I would have 100% gone into tech. I think, being able to write software, whether I was going to become a coder through going to university or whether I was going to do what I was doing, which is, designing motherboards and creating something out the back of it. I don't know. I loved maths. I was pretty good at maths, far better at maths than I was ever at English. So
You
yeah,
guys and your English is the OG English.
it is, I know, but it doesn't mean that I'm any good at it, Alex.
But that's super interesting to me, right? Because like for my kids, like I was just sharing with you, we homeschool them. So both my wife and I are engineers. We both we met at. It's so interesting, like to talk to non-US people because we don't call it uni at all.
Yeah, you call it college.
Yeah, we call it college or just school. It's but uni is such a common term with like non-US, right? Like outside the US. But anyways, that's the topic for a different day. But yeah, so we met in school and we studied the exact same computer engineering and stuff like that. And so my kids have always been, I don't want to say the word spoiled, but they've been spoiled quite a bit. Right?
But they've got STEM, right? With both you and your wife, that there's a huge, I don't want to say influence in the wrong way, but you're going to teach them about STEM, which is really important.
You're correct, right? Like even when I worked at Boeing in St. Louis, I used to help run their K through 12 STEM outreach program. And so we would bring in like 100 kids to the Boeing campus and teach them how to think like engineers. Yeah. And unfortunately for my son, or fortunately, we were also in Missouri by ourselves. It was just my wife and I and my firstborn. And so we didn't really have daycare for him at 7 p.m., right? So we would bring him with us to the Boeing campus. So he'd be there with people building Starlink or whatever. Sorry, not Starlink. The Starliner thing that Boeing just sent over, right? Like there was like engineers working on all these other like cool programs, the programs that I was on, the programs my wife was on. And so my son got to grow up not only with other students that were kind of like a few years ahead of him, but the engineers, right? Like the subject matter experts building these aircrafts for the Boeing company. And so he got exposed to that like from like 3 years old, right? 3, 4, 5 years old. And he's always had this exposure his whole life.
I think it's in the fact that this world is becoming ever more automated to a sense, right? AI is obviously the next latest thing in this thing, but automation is inevitable. We've seen that over hundreds of thousands of years that we humans are inherently lazy, so we will find the quickest route to solve the same problem. And the kind of there's no point training to be, in my head, and this is going to sound probably slightly bad, but there's no point training for a job that is likely to be replaced. You might as well become and be trained in a world where you can, as an engineer, manipulate the automation to do better, or as an engineer, design the next evolution of AI, which is, go into more like robotics and actually think about how they will walk among us. If you want to go sci-fi, right? That's going to be the route. And I think that's why STEM is so incredibly important.
And I think that echoes so powerfully with Dr. Feifei during, I don't know if you got her presentation, right? But I feel like that last 30 seconds should have been the presentation where she was like, there is no point that our kids today from kindergarten through even college, right? Like, or uni in your words, right? There's no point that they're learning anything that ChatGPT can answer in seconds.
Like I think GPT is change. It should change the way our school systems work. I mean, in the UK kind of hasn't really changed for over 100 years. We still teach in the same methods we would have done.
Every time I think of, I always imagine UK school systems to be like Hogwarts from Harry Potter, where you.
I mean, it's not far off.
You still got scrolls.
Minus the castle, it's not far off, and the whole.
You guys still go to school in robes.
Well, I mean, our uniforms are not great, no, I think it's true. I mean, obviously, we always need the creativity. We'll always need the arts. That's different. But in terms of like manufacturing or like just in engineering and those STEM reaches, I think is vital. I mean, my partner, my fiance, she's she has a degree in biology, and she now is a research nurse who literally works day in, day out on vaccines and trying to help improve lives. That's incredibly important. That's why I think we've got like such a strong tie to tech.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, but then so I guess let me get your opinion on this, and right, because I'm a huge, given what you know now about like my kids and schooling and beliefs and stuff, like my biggest objective is to have my kid not go to school, right? Like I don't want, I want him to kind of leverage what you're saying, right? Like that general availability of technology and information that we have available now that's becoming very quickly accessible to everybody, and just kind of go build something instead of
yeah,
thinking that.
I mean, I do think, I think school teaches kids more than just the education. I do 100% believe that actually, given the resources of things like ChatGPT, that actually you could probably learn more on a topic and probably do better learning on that topic by yourself, because you have access to far more resources. As long as you're given the skill of how to learn and how to digest that information, then I think you could do probably better. But obviously,
Mhm.
schools, the other aspect is social, and being able to like learn the soft skills, which every business, every employee and employer needs the ability. And I think you can tell those that have better soft skills just because we always talk about
I
bad
don't
managers and
know.
things like
I,
that.
I'd like
So
to introduce you to my 7-year-old who's never been to a public school in his life.
I mean, 7-year-olds. I mean, actually, in fairness, young kids, they have the confidence of. I mean, they've got way more confidence than most adults. They're
No,
very, very good.
no, there's
But
an experiment that was done, right? I don't know if you've ever heard of this one, right? But there was this concept of, let me see if I can't butcher this on the internet, right? There was a group of people that were like 5 years old. They gave them a paperclip and they told them, "What can you do with the paperclip?" And they each came up with like a million different ways to innovatively use a paperclip. They took that same group 12 years later as they went through kindergarten all the way through
yeah,
12th grade and graduated from high school, and they gave them that same paperclip and they came up with like 2 uses for that paperclip.
I mean, it's the creativity aspect, and actually sometimes removing the hierarchical decision and the the risk analysis and all those things, and just being creative, which is what kids do very well at. Is why they can make
But you
fake
lose that
in their
creativity
mind.
as you progress through your career.
I think unless you, I mean that there are some things. I've heard of similar stories, not that one that you just mentioned, but similar ones, which is again, it's like if you pitch, if you give adults the same, wooden boxes and ask them to build a bridge, as well as then kids the same, like give them an adult that just moves everything for them, the kids often do better because they're happy to try and fail and keep learning, because they don't overanalyze the situation. And I think unless you, like, that just takes time to kind of get through your system and get used to the whole point. Is why so many teams talk about agile mentality and the confidence in failing, and it's okay, and it's a safe space, and just it's okay to be honest and open. And I think the more we do that, the more it allows our creativity to come out. That's why hackathons are so popular and so brilliant at
Mhm.
creating fixes to problems we didn't even realize we had.
And I think you're bringing up some good points too, right? Because when ChatGPT first came out, I went and played with it, right? And I remember my very first interaction with it. I asked it because I wouldn't buy into the fact that it can give you the code the way they were advertising it, right? So I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? I know how to code a little bit. Let me just ask it like a common coding question that I would have. And my jaw just dropped that very first time that it was like, wow, like I could use this. Like a
Mm.
little tweaking, but it's doable, right? And so immediately after that realization, I brought my wife over, showed it to her, and I think we both looked at each other and were like, our jobs are obsolete at this point. Right?
I think I don't mean that. Our team, Rodney, myself, and Dara, we all literally spoke on this topic, which is where is this trend going? And I think AI is the future. As I've said, automation, it's inevitable. So trying to hide from change and automation is actually only going to hinder you later on in life. I 100% do not think it's going to replace the job, but it will change how we do the job. will become enablers and checkers and providing more of the, I want to say like the empathetic perspective. Because if ChatGPT can do all my logic, and all I need to provide is the creativity, the empathy, and the more of, again, that soft skill and understanding
The
how,
human, yeah.
the
The human
human
aspect
element.
is gonna be so critical.
Exactly.
Which
And
is
I think,
interesting because we're raising a generation of like humanless kids though.
I understand. Yeah, I understand what you mean. Yeah, I
It's
do.
like this next generation is just a generation of like screens, right? Like I feel like we were just on that. We drove to Team 24, and I think most of my 12-year-old time was spent on the screen and not looking at the.
Which is, I mean, we would have, when we were in our parents' cars, we would have been given a map if we were bored, right? That's go read a map. There was nothing there was nothing they could do. It's not until, you start getting your portable DVD players and things that you could choose a way of entertaining. But it's, I mean, I think that's why some of the kind of the soft skills are going away, in fairness, because we are, I mean, when we go out to restaurants and, parents are chatting with their friends and they have a kid, first thing they do is stick an iPad in front of them.
Right. But that's creating an interesting dynamic though, right? Because we're saying like ChatGPT or AI is going to enable us to not worry about the small details, right? Because it'll let us worry about the bigger, more human characteristic ones. But at the same time, we're not doing a very good job as a society of raising new humans.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I think every generation has probably had their struggles. I don't think we'll be any different, or won't be when we have kids. But
Hold off as long as you possibly can, Dan. That would be my only advice.
don't let my fiance hear you on that one. But no, it's me probably being the worst.
I tell people getting married changes your life a little bit. I think a lot of people over exaggerate when they say getting married changes your life. I think getting married, especially if you've been together for a while, like you'll wake up the next morning and it's more of the same. But when you have your first kid, your life changes drastically. But it's still manageable because you will both be tired, but you can ping pong the responsibility.
Yeah.
It's when you have that second kid that you're both 100% plugged in. And when you get outnumbered, that's when you're screwed.
Outnumbered, yeah, okay. I'll definitely bear that one in mind. I mean, I'm the one that's more family oriented than she is.
My grandpa has 16 kids, so
wow. Okay,
yeah,
that's a lot. I mean, talk about outnumbered there.
Yeah, no, my grandpa has 16 kids, and each of his kids had an average about 7 or 8 kids each.
Wow, that's such a big family.
Yeah, my son, now that we moved closer to family, he's been like every weekend we go out somewhere and I'm like, that's your cousin, that's your cousin, that's your cousin. Like we're going to different houses, different families, different everything. And he's like, how are these people all my cousins? I'm like, your grandpa liked to have kids. Your great grandpa liked to have kids.
That was his form of entertainment. Eh? There we go.
Mean, when you were born in 1916.
yeah, massively different time back then.
Yep. No, there was definitely a different time back then. So it makes you wonder like how technology is going to maybe numb us, and maybe they say history repeats itself, right? Like I wonder once we get to a point where like, because I can see us maybe getting to the age of Wall-E, right? Like when the automation is so powerful that everything's done for us, right? What then becomes a human's then?
I mean, yeah. There's another movie. I only ever see it on social media, usually TikTok. I'm not gonna lie, but where the guy was frozen and wakes up in a time where like the highest IQ is like 5 or something ridiculously small, and like people can't. Have you not? I'll see if I can find that and I'll send it to you. But it's like people can't put circles and like, I'll try and put square pegs in round holes, and he's just sat there. He's like, what's 1 + 1? He's like 2, and they're like, oh my god, he's a genius, because AI did everything for them. So it meant that they were doing was partying and nothing. Like their groceries were picked up for them, it was cooked for them, they just literally ate and partied. And it was mental how you think, actually, we're kind of heading that way. So how do we stop it? You're right. It's a
I don't know that we need to stop it, but maybe embrace it, right? Because
But I don't want to numb the world. I want to continue challenging, but remove the day-to-day crap that none of us want to do.
but that's an ambitious goal.
Shouldn't we always have ambitious goals though? That's how you
You
challenge.
you should, right? You absolutely should. So my ambitious goal would be to leverage the fact that the world's getting numb to create opportunity, right? Be part of that 1% that isn't numb, that will
Yeah.
then drive an economy versus trying to influence the 99, right? Because I feel like you're saying let's try to fix the 99. I'm saying like no, let's leave the 99 to suffer and take advantage of the 1% that doesn't.
I think it's different. I definitely don't. I mean, I want to make sure that I definitely don't go numb. Not that I'm thinking that like the stupid sci-fi movies and everything are going to come true in my lifetime. I think that's probably more of like
You watch
my
Terminator,
Yeah,
2, Terminator
exactly.
3.
But I think that's going to definitely be more of like the kids and kind of vary in terms of their generations. But I also want to make sure that as a society, as the English, as the human race, that we have to continuously develop and push ourselves to always be better. Because if we don't, that's when wars start. That's when we start fighting over ridiculous things, and that's what always leads to trouble.
Right. Yeah. Then what is it? There's a quote that I should really look it up because it's hard to remember it for me because I can't remember anything. But it's the whole like good men create good times create weak men create bad times, and bad times create something else, and it's like a downward spiral of just.
I know what you mean, and it's again, like you say, it's history repeating itself.
Yeah. So we're definitely. I feel like we're going down an interesting path, but where I was trying to get to, and I don't know how much of this history you know, especially from the tech world, right? But the year 1955, I believe, is a very important a year, or somewhere around the 1950s. Have you ever heard of this 1950, 1955 time frame?
No, go on.
Era? So Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Larry Ellison, these are all like moguls in the tech world that were born like that same year, like 1954 or something like that.
55 was that?
Right? Yeah, something around that time frame where they were all born in this general little pocket of opportunity where they were old enough to get access to the very first internet, right? Like they were just at the right 18, 19-year-old age, right where they were coming out of high school, coming into the university life. The universities were starting to get computers, right? But they were also not so old that they thought they were ignorant to computers. So they were just young enough to be curious, right? But not too young to be inadequate and not know what a computer was, right? Like they were just at the right place at the right time. That then it like I think there's reports, right? Like Bill Gates got countless hours at his school's like terminal learning computing and programming, right? And it was these premier opportunity moments in life where you're just born at the right time. And so it makes me wonder, like,
thing to do with it, because you're either too old to where it skips you, too young where you have already missed the curve. So there is definitely a premium point.
So the reason I was bringing that up, right, is because when COVID hit and all the kids went home from school, right, my wife and I doubled down on homeschooling, right? We doubled down on basically owning our kids' education. And we're like, there's going to be a moment in time where like this generation that went home in 2020, it was unprecedented. It never happened before, right? And there's going to be people that come out of this at the tail end 20, 30 years from now in a very different position than the majority of the folks that came in that just didn't take advantage of that opportunity. So then it also makes me wonder, like, there's a generation of kids that are being raised with ChatGPT, and there's got to be like, again, we might not know it now, but 20, 30 years from now, the jobs that they create, the opportunities that they create, because they either were the right age to have enough curiosity to leverage the power of GPT or AI. And so any thoughts there? Like, what do you think? Like,
yeah, I mean, I do think you're right in terms of like the right time, right place, right time for a start. I mean, my parents, my dad especially, so he was born 65, so slightly older than your 55 point, but 1965, he grew up with computers. He got one of the first ones. He learned to program, ended up writing a game for fun, ended up selling the game. But he did that because he was curious, and now he went and did this, and this, and then ended up owning his own company. And that all stemmed from a point of curiosity. Had he been born slightly later, where you weren't necessarily your first couple of computers, where he always used to go on about how you used to get given the code in a magazine, you have to sit there and type it out. And he says, had I not had that, would I have had the same level of curiosity, to write and create my own game rather than just getting it on a CD and
Right. Just playing it.
Yeah, how our generation grew up. You got given something, you plugged it in, you went. So yeah, I do think there's an element of that. I do definitely think that, like I said, ChatGPT or any AI will remove certain jobs. I do think it's going to open up massive, huge ones. We've already started to see some of them come out, which is about like, GPT prompt engineers, where they get given a requirement and they have to go to GPT and write the prompt. Or you even get like ones that design specific ones for specific needs for specific companies. I was speaking to, I actually happened to be a solution partner, which was Ethicode, and they've written their own GPT apps to basically handle all their recruitment or connections between Salesforce, data manipulation, and then out into Jira. Like they've started to create so many scenarios where they notice that time could be saved, and either a salesperson's job didn't need to do that manual data entry. So either you don't need as many, or you can better spend their time. And like they're just finding those exactly. And data is key. Data is king in every aspect. If you have bad data, you're going to make bad decisions. So if you give bad data to GPT, then it's going to spit out just as bad data. So yeah, I mean, I think it's vital that we learn how to properly use it, understand the ethics of using things like this, and I do think that's a massive key area is about the ethics.
So speaking of that, though, I wanted to maybe, I don't know how political you are with your world, and I don't even know how political I want to get this thing into, right? But I just woke up this morning and I saw an interesting headline. Apple Intelligence, or their new AI for iOS 18, is not coming to the EU, right? I know you guys are technically not part of it, right? But
yeah, well, we still get
how do you feel about governments getting in the way? Like, I get the fact that governments want to protect privacy and whatnot, but at the same time, do you think that the governments will maybe overstep their bounds to the point where an entire continent would miss out from a generation of technical advancement, while other countries that embrace it are going to move forward?
We saw that in France with the printing press, actually, where the government got involved because it was ruining certain things. They put a stop to the printing press, and it delayed their growth, like the technical growth advancement, by about 50 years, just for not doing it for two. So you can see how quickly that like affected somebody. Do I think government should get involved? I think yes. I think that they have to, not only because at the end of the day, not that they are totally 100% responsible for their citizens, but I do think they have an obligation to protect their citizens. I think that there's a big fine line between getting involved and forcing companies to do certain actions. Like it's good because, for example, there's been, I mean, the one that we saw a little while ago was how much your Congress was affecting TikTok and how they were dealing with people's data and privacy rules and things like that. And obviously that we've had in the EU similar cases, not with TikTok, but with similar cases in the past where data was being misused actually by Facebook, and we had or they were selling and manipulating our data in ways that we wouldn't have known about. So I do think that it's important those are put in place to stop misuse of data, but I don't ever think that a country should come in and ban
A whole app.
ban something.
The
Allow
problem,
it's a very tough one.
The bigger problem I have, right, is I feel like historically that's the government's responsibility, right? Like you said, I think you summed it up nicely, which is protected citizens, right? Awesome. I'm all for it. The problem I'm having though is, have you ever seen the Internship movie? The one with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson?
Yeah, the Google one.
Yeah, the Google one. Yeah. Where Vince Vaughn is explaining his like new app idea for where you take a picture and you continuously put it on the line.
Yeah.
And the kid's going like online. And he's like, no, it's different. You take a picture, you put it on the line, and he's like, it's online, right? And he just keeps saying on the line. And I feel like a lot of our governments that do govern, right, the ones that are responsible for protecting us, are on that Vince Vaughn side of the house, right? They're on the line. Like, I don't understand, how do you govern something that you don't even understand?
So that's why you should have advisors. That's why you should have similarly respected individuals, people that have done good for that country, that can come along and make ask the right level of detail, not so that it's just a full like nerd session, but ask the right level of detail to understand their privacy, their security, their data handling, storage, like all of these questions which are vital, rather than going, does it, use facial recognition? Well, you don't know what that does. You don't know how they store it. So there is a point. And I mean, we do this, especially in this country, we do this with medical research. Government isn't necessarily making those decisions alone. They 100% have medical advisors that are doing the questions before the NHS trusts use a particular medication. They've already gone through all this rigmarole and then said, okay, it's not only safe to use, it's going to provide this much benefit to these number of people, it's going to cost the country this much money. And then it's the government that goes, okay, that's fine. And I think that's what it should be, which is we have vetted as a technological industry, and we are now advising the government that it's okay.
But now that also assumes then that you have, I guess, good people.
Everything assumes that you've got, and I think you always have to have a level of trust.
But the world, but the world is becoming less and less trustable.
Yeah, but I think if you live as a glass half empty, then you will always stay that. And I think you have to. My parents have always told me that you give someone trust until they ruin it. And you trust somebody to be an adult, to be responsible, to not lie. And then when they start to ruin that is when you then can start to change your opinion. But you can't start out saying, I don't trust what you're saying. So I think that's what, maybe I'm more of an optimist than anything, but I think that's what I was always, taught, so I'm going to do.
I find it interesting, right? It's not that I have one opinion over another, but I find it interesting to hear different perspectives and just understand how other people see the same problems, especially with like diversity of like that you and I have, right? Different countries.
Different upbringings, everything. I think it's just as vital. I think one of the biggest things is if you don't listen, you don't learn. So
that is very, very powerful. If you don't listen, you don't learn. And I think just to maybe bring it back into the Atlassian ecosystem, I think this is what makes Atlassian's ecosystem so powerful, right? Because we're such a diverse, geographically dispersed group of folks that even though we all have different upbringings, we all have different beliefs and different cultures, right? Me on my gun-ho that taco is not a sandwich belief, right? We can all still come together, right? And I think that is really the power of here at Atlassian, is like we can also come together, have a great week together at teams.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that. How many different nationalities where they're just in that community leader room. And it was
so many.
brilliant to see. And people like sharing not only Atlassian knowledge, general knowledge, whatever it is, stories from all over the world. And it was great to kind of be a part of it.
Yeah. So since we're running out of time here, I wanted to take a second here. Walk us through your award. What was your nomination and category for?
Yeah, so mine is, I'll hold it up properly so you can see it. So it was the Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year. What does that mean?
So I joined.
I'm down to show the heavy.
Yeah,
that's a heavy thing.
They are heavy, actually. I was really surprised when they handed it to me. I was like expecting this like plastic mold thing, and I was like, "Oh, that's actually quite heavy."
That's
but
weight to it, yeah. Like the security guards, those bouncers at that nightclub, they were just checking everything. I'm like, man, the real threat was with those.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like that can hurt someone. It's
like you can really knock out with that.
Yeah. So yeah, the Rookie of the Year is so I joined the community leaders back in July, August time last year.
So you're new.
I haven't even done my full year. My first event was the 30th of August last year. So yeah, I'm still doing a year, and it was basically, throw yourself into it. That's kind of what I presume the award was. I was really surprised. I was very happy that obviously I was being recognized, but obviously I was very, very surprised, especially considering the number of amazing people there are as community leaders.
So two things that come to mind then. So 9 years in the ecosystem, that means you were 8 in. What made you wait 8 to want to get involved more?
Good question. I actually wanted to get involved before, but I think there's always that niggling thing that kind of says in the back of your head, I started hearing it before I was taking my ACPs, which is, are you ready? Do you really think you can do this? And I think eventually I was like, why am I waiting? What's holding me back? I already use the community. I love reading all the contributions, and I'm starting to reply on them anyway. So I'm already becoming more and more involved. Why am I not doing more and actually kind of trying to like hold events? And obviously then I started to go to some of the ACE events in London. And I think at some point I was like, God, I just got to get on with this. And I did. So I applied and got accepted. And yeah, less than a year later.
How far are you from London?
I'm about an hour and a half by train.
Okay, by train. So that's a lot farther by anything else.
It's about, I think it's about 18 miles ish. So it would, but the trouble is obviously 80.
Okay.
But the trouble is I can get to the outskirts of London fairly quickly, but getting into London is the other challenge. It's going to take you twice as long just to do that last like 10 miles. What
does that mean?
Oh, so like if I was to drive to London, I can get to the outskirts of London, like where effectively London kind of begins.
London proper, okay, yeah.
Yeah, but for me to get into the city of London, like the actual,
like if you were in a Buckingham Palace.
Yeah, so if I wanted to drive to Buckingham, that would take me about 2 hours, so an hour to do that last little bit.
Really?
Yeah.
Just from congestion? Like, is that really that big traffic?
Congestion, poor roads. I mean, some of our don't forget, like London.
Don't forget that we're hundreds and hundreds of years old.
Yeah, it's a really old city, so we've got buildings that like outdate most countries' independence levels, which is ridiculous.
That would probably be the one part that I was like, if I got a passport for that, like to go see that, because our city, like where I live now, it's so interesting because it's an old city. It's an old city, but it's cows. It's Dairyland.
Yeah.
And so all I see is new buildings.
Yeah.
Right? Like everything is brand new. Like my house is only 20 years old and all the developments are new. The roads are baby butter smooth because they're brand new roads. And
so we've got
all the infrastructure is new. And so it's kind of weird
Yeah, I mean, some of our put it this way. So the actual city of London, so there's two things. You get London, Greater London, which in itself is a city, and then you have the city of London. That is old. The city of London is older than England. Like there's actual paper, like they've got mayors going back before England was a country.
That's crazy.
That's how insanely old London is. So, like, yeah, some of the infrastructure is not great. I mean, they've obviously modernized it a lot, but it still takes you quite a long time just to do that last bit, congestion, everything going on.
You're better off walking. So there's
Well,
no
that's the thing.
trains but there's no trains or anything else that gets you into the heart?
Yeah, so if I was to drive, it would take me more time than it would to train. So I get on the
So the
train
train gets you into London then?
into London.
Okay.
Yeah, so I get all the way to the center of London within an hour and 20 minutes, hour and 30
That
minutes.
makes sense. Yeah, because at least in LA, we don't even have that concept, right? Like LA. By the way, I don't know if you're planning on coming to Teams 25, but
Oh yeah, I will be in Anaheim.
be prepared to drive.
Yeah.
Be prepared
Yeah, I
to
mean,
drive.
well, in fairness, the American is built far more spread out than our cities are.
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys are what, like your whole country fits in like a zip code of one of our cities, right?
But it's insane. Like if you look at actually most European cities, you go to Germany, you go to Frankfurt, you go to Berlin, you go to Italy with Rome and things like that. Like our cities are so dense. There's so many more like high rises and little alleys and homes living off of everywhere. Whereas yours is big spaces, big roads, and is built for driving. But
Yeah,
it just doesn't work like that in our cities.
so crazy. Yeah, because I can't like we were so happy like when we moved to our new house, there's a grocery store right behind our house, so we can walk there. And we were like, this was like, and there was an ice cream shop, and we're like, we're just so excited. We're like, this is amazing. We can walk there. This is crazy. Like, because we always have to drive everywhere to get anywhere.
Exactly.
It's again that diversiveness of how crazy. Because like again, Atlassian and Jira brings us all together,
Oh
right?
yeah.
We all speak the same Jira language. But when you just take a second here to look beyond our lives in Atlassian, like we realize that we all come from so many different worlds.
I mean, without Atlassian, you and I would never have spoken at all. And
Maybe I might have been a bias at.
could have been, but it would have been extremely unlikely in terms of anything. But that wouldn't have happened. Rodney and I would never have done a podcast, done shows with Atfire. I would have never met any of the friends that I've now got that are in the ecosystem, and I may not have even had the kind of consultancy job that I would have had. So, I mean, it's definitely provided us, and like I said, it's given us so many opportunities to speak and talk about team frameworks and this and that. But yeah, it's always good to also have, like you say, have different perspectives and learn and listen to different people.
So I want to close this up with a little trivia that I have. Not really a trivia, but just a little fact that I want to give you. I'm really bad at tabs. Like I have so many tabs open on my browser, and my computer has not shut down in forever. Right, like that this bad boy has been alive for a long time, and I'm actually kind of afraid for it right now. I feel like it's gonna die on me. I told my wife, I'm like, I really got to do like a backup of my computer before I regret it, because these Apple Silicon computers, like it's all in one chip, right? Like there's no replacing a hard drive or taking out some RAM or anything, right? Like it's once your Macs die nowadays, they're gone. And I have a tab open, www.dantoombs-co-uk.
Oh yeah.
How to keep Jira clean and healthy. And I've had this article open for like the last 6 months.
My God, have you actually?
Yeah. And I've been meaning to read it. I've been meaning to read it, and it's on my to-do list, but it's just maybe let's talk about your blog here for a minute or two. What was
go for it.
That came before you being a Atlassian community leader, right? So what was your motivation behind starting a blog?
Okay, so I think when I left consultancy, when I left Clear Vision at the time, I was starting to kind of, like I said, see things from a different perspective, obviously being in a company. And I got asked actually to write some blogs on that kind of experience. And it was going to be used as a wider like white paper about kind of jobs in the ecosystem and how they got this and how they got that. And they just basically said, like, we just want 500 words on this particular topic and 500 words on this one. And we'll take some things from it and put it in the book. And I don't know, I just enjoyed it. And then I started thinking, I was like, I wonder whether or not like I could enjoy it for tech, like an actual piece of functionality, or some help, because obviously I was starting to consume more and more for the community as well. And at the time I was like, oh, I'm gonna give it a go, and then I got asked to do it for as a contracting way, that's similar to how Rodney does in terms of you know uh, people effectively buying his time, and I got given an opportunity to do some of that. And I think from that it kind of grew, and I took a little bit of time off because I was starting to kind of run out of steam. And then again, eventually I kind of wanted to pick it back up again. And with I miss it much, but the Monday coffees, and obviously when that kind of left, I wanted to kind of that there was an opportunity where I also saw, and I was still enjoying kind of the in case you missed it, here's what's gone on. And I thought that's a good opportunity that I can continue writing, even if it's not totally like an enjoyable experience, but like I do enjoy it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, thank you very much. I think we have definitely come to the end.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming on here. You are very high energy, and I love our conversations.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
our
no,
first
I really appreciate you having me, Alex. I really do.
yeah. Anyways, Dan, I look forward to hopefully I
Yeah.
run into you, and appreciate you taking the time here.
Thank you very much.